So how was lunch, everyone? I mean, I love the fried chicken myself. All right, so quick introduction. First, myself, I am Rodney Nissen. I am probably better known as Jira Guy. By day, I am a consultant with Release Team, but I'm also a blogger in the Atlassian space and also one half of the Jira Live crew. Bill, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Yep, so I'm Bill Wood. I am a consultant with CADWorks. I'm part of the United States group. There are a few of us, and we're really excited to start increasing our presence here in the U.S. I have worked in quite a few different industries over the last 10 or 15 years, and it's been an interesting ride. And I'm really excited to be working in the Atlassian ecosystem now, and with the amazing group at CADWorks that I work with. So, yeah, that's
all right. And I don't think she actually needs any introduction, but I want to ask her to do it anyways. Brittany?
Hello, I am Brittany Joyner. I am a Trello super nerd productivity architect. I love nerding out about Trello. I've been using it for over a decade. I use some of the other Atlassian tools too, like Jira and Confluence, but Trello is my bread and butter. I've been helping clients use it. I even wrote a book about it that released last year. So that is me. I've been voted most likely to get a Trello tattoo. I'm getting a head start on that with a temporary one this week to kind of feel out the waters. So yeah, that's me.
And what is your opinion on Jira Work Management?
Well, Mike Day, if you're watching this, let me share your thoughts. No, it is another product. I will not probably be choosing it over Trello, but maybe there's certain times when it's useful. I don't know. I'm an open-minded gal.
Very diplomatic. And our final panelist, Kip.
Hi everyone, my name's Kip Friend. I'm an Agile coach and Atlassian specialist at Accenture. Unlike Bill, I guess I've had a few kind of different careers before. So originally I was an artist and designer, and then I had a failed attempt to be a politician. So this third attempt is being an Agile coach.
I was a failed politician too.
Oh, there we go. Maybe we can do a sort of vote for Atlassian campaign.
All right. So let's dig into it. Our first question I think I'm going to ask you guys is, what is one mistake you've made with an Atlassian product, and what did you learn from it? And because this is I'm asking you to put yourself out there, I'm going to take the lead. I'm actually going to put myself out there first. I actually made this mistake. We were trying to solve a problem on Jira server, and I got a little too enthusiastic when we got a response back from Atlassian Premier Support. The response looked good. It looked like it would probably solve our problem. I was excited for it. I went to go put it in our test instance, and about the time I get done with the configuration change and restart the system, I start getting questions. Is Jira down for you? Which is never a good question to have. I did not properly label my systems, and I was making these changes on production untested. So what I learned from that was label your systems, be sure you know what system you're working on before you hit change.
You could also just say it works on my machine. People respond very well to that when you say that.
Yeah, I try and be honest though. All right, Kid, why don't you share your story?
Yeah, I guess enthusiasm is normally what it comes down to with lots of these things, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think kind of over-enthusiasm and over-zealousness is what I see as a source of lots of things. And in particular, people trying to force, usually for good reasons and with good motivation, their teams to work a certain way to achieve some things. My favorite mistakes were around overzealous of time tracking and trying to get teams to really specifically estimate and then track work every day and then go through. Remember one occasion where I worked with a team, we were so happy, they were bang on their estimates for everything. Everything was 100%. So we thought they're nailing it, 2 or 3 sprints into that. We went out to the pub afterwards, they revealed they'd been lying the entire time. At the end of each day, they'd seen how happy it made us to see the estimates kind of plot through. They just matched everything perfectly to the estimates, hadn't actually been logging anything at all. And I think really for me, and I think it overlaps interesting with your passion for Trello in the areas there, what we need to do, and what I learned from that was don't try and force a behavior on some people because you can in the tool, because you want to do that later there. Just think of them as humans, and try and optimize for that.
All right. Brittany?
Yeah, it's kind of to bounce off of the other side of that coin. What I see a lot of people do is they're like, oh my gosh, I just discovered this new tool, whether it's Trello or Jira or whatever, and they're like, did you know that I can add 100 power-ups to a board? And it's like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. There is such a thing as too much of a good thing. And so that's probably the biggest thing that I'll see is, people come in and ask me to help them with their Trello boards, and you can't even see what's going on because they've got so many different buttons everywhere with all these different apps they've added on, and they don't even know what they want to do with it yet. They just, same with automations. They're like, oh, I saw an automation that can do this, and I added this, and it's like, well, let's, stop and let's figure out what we're actually trying to do first, and let's solve those problems, kind of a crawl, walk, run sort of thing, rather than jumping in with everything all at once, because that's also just going to intimidate people too, because they're going to be like, wow, wait, where do I start? So you want to start small, and you can always build your way up. And shout out for Trello. I actually think it's a great platform for doing that, because you can start out with a simple board and just drag cards around, and then add on those other features as you want to. I don't know if Jira work management is that easy to use, or I don't know.
It depends on who the administrator is.
Okay,
Yeah.
fair.
You need a swear jar for every time Brittany plugs Trello.
Yeah, exactly.
We'd be very well off.
Yes.
But yeah, Jira, it's the same way. I've seen people go, oh my God, there's this whole ecosystem of apps in this marketplace, and I could try all of them for free for a month. And before you know it, there's like 100 different apps on this poor instance, and it is just having the hardest day ever. Mm-hmm. So definitely seen that before. It is easy to jump into the deep end when you see everything you can do. And it definitely helps to take a step back and go, well, what do I need to do rather than what can I do? Bill, you got something for us?
Thinking about this, I actually remember the Windows XP days when you would open your parent or grandparents' Internet Explorer and it had like 50 toolbars on it. You could only see half the page. So I've seen some customer instances that had a similar amount of bloat from plugins. Every button that you can think of for every plugin is everywhere. It really confuses and just bloats the interface. So that's definitely something that I see a lot of for sure. Mm-hmm. It's very counterproductive because you're trying to be more productive with your Jira and Confluence products, right? And when you start putting as many things in there as you can that look neat and, oh yeah, this will help me in my workflow, this will help me do this and that, but the next thing you know, there's too much and you're actually inhibiting progress.
Do you love how all of your horror stories start with Windows?
Oh, yeah.
The first line is always Windows.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's a good point to help us kind of stop, just take a breath, and ask, why are we doing what we're doing? That gives us not only a chance to observe what are we trying to do here, what are we trying to accomplish, but also take that stop and say, am I sure I'm on the right instance? Honestly, I still have some coworkers from that time who, whenever they ring me up, they bring it up. Like, remember the time you brought down Jira midday? Everyone got an early lunch that day.
This is when it always stresses me out how often people are very unagile in their approach to their tooling, right? Mm-hmm. And it kind of brings this point of all the things, all the shiny stuff, and all the way through. And I see the flip of that as well, where people are like, the procurement process in my organization is so horrible, I'll just pick the one and we'll go there. And it's like, you do need to try these things in a sort of responsible, piloty kind of way before you can commit at that point. Always random and mess.
Something that I wish more people thought of when they were installing plugins. You're browsing the marketplace, you find something neat, and you think about it from your perspective. Wow, this is cool, I could use this. But you have to think about, how much is this going to help other people? How useful is this to the rest of the team, to the rest of the users? Is this just a shiny toy for me to play with? Or is this something that's really going to enhance our experience?
So, moving on real quick. We've all made mistakes. We've all been there. We've had those moments where we go, oh. So I want to talk about that moment for a second. you're in the middle of something, you realize you just made a mistake. And so now that you're at that point, what are your next steps and how do you handle that moment? Brittany, why don't you get started?
Yeah, I find that when, this can happen in any tool you're using, any circumstance. I don't know if anybody else's brain works this way, but like when I found something is wrong, I want to just run and fix it. And it's not even run away from it, but it's like, oh, this is wrong. Well, let me do this, and this. I have learned the most important thing you can do is stop and just take a deep breath and step away from it for a second. Because half the time, what you did is maybe not even wrong, or you'll run around trying to fix it and make 20 more problems. So in any case, stop and take a break. But also, even if, when you're stepping back and you're like, okay, yeah, this isn't the best way to set this up, or yeah, this, did cause a problem over here and mess with that. Talk to the people it impacted, and let's, work on figuring out, well, what exactly made it a mistake? Because, somebody might be like, oh, it was a mistake to add this thing to it. It's like, no, there was a result of adding that thing that is what's causing the problem. And so, your classic 5 whys, get down to what the problem is, and then do not that. I mean, we don't have to overcomplicate it. And so doing that and then reaching out for help when you do that too. The Atlassian community is a fantastic place for you to get help. I have several friends who spend, I know, so much time just in the Trello community part of it, let alone all of the other products that are answering questions that users ask about, how do I, make this product do this? Or I've had this happen, how do I fix it? And there's a bunch of people who are happy to answer, help, and solve those problems and help you figure out the right sort of path with that. So you're not in it alone. Definitely find people to talk to because other people have probably been there and made the same mistake.
Coming from a systems administration background, one of the impulses that we have is, oh no, this broke. We need to get it fixed right now. It needs to go back into production. We have to fix this. And it kind of clouds your judgment. You do have to step back, take a breath, inspect the impact, make sure that you really know what you're about to change while you're trying to patch the mistake. And yeah, the Atlassian community is definitely, I feel, one of the best communities around a product or a vendor that I've ever seen. And I used to work for IBM, and all right,
got a lot.
People have some opinions on IBM, I see. But even then, the IBM community is still kind of closed, and you have this older generation of users. Atlassian is such a welcoming, open environment, and it feels kind of younger overall as a, personal relationships. Everybody isn't really guarded and trying to gatekeep their knowledge. Everybody's familiar. We all know each other. We all like each other. We share knowledge. You post you're having a problem with something, like she said, and immediately you get feedback from so many people. So, yeah, I definitely agree on those points.
It's a really human thing that's coming up most, right? It's communication skills.
Exactly.
I'm a relentless oversharer, which is a really bad thing to be when something goes wrong. I'll tend to go over that, and it's much better to have someone calm, who could do things there. I think a pattern I've seen all the time, and in fact, we were chatting, there was a Twitter.x thread the other day where someone's intern had sent out a load of emails with test in their header, and the responses were all of these tech teams going, we've done that, I can relate to that, everyone's been there. To be fair, the company was very supportive of the intern as well. But I really think it's not a matter of if, it's when you're going to make those live production incidents that things go through, and that's how you respond. I've always seen the value in having someone on your team who's a really good communicator to actually take it away from the person like me that might be involved with things and calmly work out what you do with stakeholders, people like.
Something I really want to harp on is something Brittany said. My first impulse, because I come from a system background as well, is I got to fix it now. Let me make 20 changes and just see what sticks. And I really have to remind myself that it's really worth slowing down, proper debugging. You make one change, then you check it. And it's a very methodical practice approach, but it is the best way to keep from making the situation worse, because you could tell what worked and what didn't, so you can reset it quickly. You're not trying to figure out, well, which one of these 20 settings I changed was the one that actually needed to be changed. So I really want to point that out, that the best thing is to slow down. Another point I want to point out, and several of you said it, is communicate. Usually when you make these mistakes, it is not happening in a vacuum. It's not a matter of if someone noticed, it's how long have they known for. With my mistake, I mentioned it was almost immediate when I started hearing the murmurs. It was no open office, so the moment I hit that change and everyone literally all over the floor started murmuring, I instantly knew, uh-oh. But communicate, be honest, say, look, here's what happened, I'm getting it fixed. If you have a good team, practice those kind of maneuvers where if the problem's with your system, your buddy next to you knows, okay, I'm the communication person in this scenario. I need to start talking to the users and the stakeholders so they know what's going on, and let him focus on solving the problem. Because if he's trying to communicate and solve the problem, he's going to be rushed. He's going to get into that make 20 changes mentality. It's not going to be very good.
Luckily, though, Gen AI is going to fix it for us, right? That inability to be a good communicator.
And it works perfectly every time.
Yeah, all technology with bugs. I remember there was a story online of a person who was using ChatGPT to communicate with his spouse so that he didn't miscommunicate, get the misunderstanding. So hopefully that's less of the sorts of mistakes that we see, but
Speaking of ChatGPT, when you are trying to troubleshoot something, AI can make mistakes. If you ask ChatGPT, how do I fix this problem? It could be based on information from years ago, or it could misconstrue something, and you don't take that at face value. You make sure you verify that answer before you just start making changes based on what ChatGPT says.
I feel like it's like a toddler. Like it can be helpful, but like if you don't give it all the context, like that's the reason it's not, AI is not gonna, in my opinion, fully replace any of us, is because there's certain nuances of context that you need to make decisions, and we're all here because we have that context. And so, yeah, use those tools. It's like a calculator, but if you don't ask it the right thing, then how you
don't get the right
garbage
answer.
in, garbage out.
Yeah.
I think having the smarts with the human but the AI to enhance that, though, is really
Yes.
right. I think
Yeah.
my favorite demo on high velocity was them using Atlassian intelligence with JSM to change the tone of agents' voices in their things. So a little bit more humorous, a little bit more on brand with things. It was like, don't waste your people's time by trying to make them adhere to some brand guidelines if what you want is their smarts around the solution, and you can use the AI to enhance the rest along the way.
All right. Well, moving on to our next question. We've given some examples of mistakes we've either seen or done firsthand. But that's not the only time we can learn from mistakes. So I want to take a look, maybe think about some mistakes we've seen friends make, others, colleagues, someone on Twitter make, and share some of those stories that have stuck with you and why. Kit?
Yeah, sure. I think that it's a bit specific and niche to our world of things, but hey, this is that conference, right? Where the things that I really find that misunderstanding the nomenclature and the way that the tools work by people can lead to also some others of things. Like, and there's classics there, like misunderstanding, at least historically, putting a feature layer in Jira and why you can't do that, even though Safe says, and things. We soon will be able to in different kind of flavors. But things like the concept of a project in Jira, I've seen that misused lots, and people kind of try and spin them up and spin them down rather than them be like a space for tools. And I think for me, that's a role that we will hopefully all continue to play because, yeah, we can automate some of our jobs, maybe focus less on the things that the Windows kind of problems that the Bill's having fun with. Yeah, I'd like to have that taken away and like done in the cloud and SaaS there. But I think if we can refocus ourselves on actually that, like, let me help the tool work for you. Don't focus on what that word means to you now. Let me tell you like the history and like where those things. So I think there's goodness as part of that. I've seen a lot of people waste a lot of time on like trying to do the feature layer or use projects in a weird way.
Yeah, it's interesting. seeing the ways that people try to configure the software, especially now that they can change the names of their issue types and stuff. The hierarchy can be altered now, which is an amazing feature, and I'm so happy that it's available, but it's a little dangerous too when uninformed customers may go in and start building a hierarchy that doesn't quite make sense, and then we come in and we're like, why did you do it this way? Let's kind of correct course here.
I mean, I'm going to open the can of worms with Brittany, because I guess one of the reasons that I sometimes go like, Trello might not be right for your team is if they need a little bit more of that structure. Like freedom can be very dangerous, like in some places, right? And there's that healthy medium between things. And what I love about Trello is that freedom. What can be troubling with Trello is that freedom, like around things like.
Well, I mean, and that's why, that's not my answer to this question, but I think of Trello as like a box of Legos, right?
Mm.
I mean, you can make a Death Star, a Hogwarts castle, you can make your own thing, you can make something someone else has made, but like you need someone to kind of guide you around, because I completely agree. It's like almost too many options. Like I think that's the beauty of it, but also it can be tough. That's why I come in and everybody's got 100 power-ups because they can, like, yeah. My actual, something I see a lot in experience, though, related to this is kind of even the step before you get there and you're trying to make the product do this and that. I've had clients come to me and say, our workflow is crap. Can Trello fix it? And I hate to say that none of these tools are going to fix your workflows. Like, not Jira Work Management, not any Jira, Trello. It'll do everything, but it won't fix your workflows. And so, thank you. Yeah. So what I encourage people to do is rather than come in and start with the tool and craft it into a billion pieces, start with what are you trying to do? Fix your workflow, because Trello and all of these tools, they're just going to optimize and scale your processes. And if you have bad processes, then it will not make them good. It will optimize and scale bad processes. So figure out what your workflow should be and, find the right tool that's going to automate it and work for it. And yeah, it's probably going to be Trello in a lot of cases, but you've got to figure out what that workflow is, and then you can optimize it from there. So yeah.
Yeah, it definitely is a culture thing. In some organizations, they don't always plan out how they want to do things, and then they come in and expect a software solution to put that process in place for them, but internally they still do not really solidify and pass on the knowledge of how they're going to do this. They're just like, here's the tool, here's the statuses, here's the workflow, this is how it works, go for it. And it leaves people very confused sometimes, or just out of sync. Everybody is on different pages based on their perception of how it's supposed to work.
Well, they're like, which feature do I use to make sure everybody sees this? And it's like, teamwork, that one, the one where people collaborate and check in on things,
yeah, it's a mess, but it can always be corrected. There's always a way to make positive change, and it starts within the org. You build the culture internally, you use the tools to augment that culture, and then it works out.
And even though the tools aren't necessarily the fix, right, they'll definitely block you if they're not there, especially these days, right? I think one mistake I often see there is just massively undercooking the investment. And for most people, your Jira or Trello or other internet, these are like production systems, right? That are like upkeeping your entire company. Think of the horrible value of all the stuff in them and how much they power your way of working. And then people are like, yeah, one guy, 80% of their time for like 2,000 people, that should be enough. It's like, really not. Treat this like one of your production systems that you have there and invest in it accordingly.
Absolutely. I'm reminded of a person, and this is incidentally the mistake that I learned from, and he was very much like that. It was a company we had brought in through acquisition, and before we acquired them, he was primarily a product manager, and that's what he continued to be after the acquisition. But he was also their Jira admin on the side, but he never went through any of the proper training, any of the experience. It's just they needed someone to do it, and he was it. So a lot of his practices and how he was guiding the team had to be untrained because he didn't have the experience necessary nor the time to dedicate to setting up those kind of best practices, those procedures. So I've always thought of it like this. For a good ecosystem within a company, you kind of need the right processes, people, and tools. And I think very much like the fire triangle where you need fuel, heat, and oxygen. You take any one of them away, the entire thing collapses. So it's the same thing, people, processes, tools. If you don't have the right fit in any one of those things, the entire thing collapses. And we have seen this time and again in too many examples. I think this guy in particular, the point where I went, you need some coaching was for his project where he was the project guy, he decided to write a query. He found the maximum length you could write for a query. And then he optimized it further because it still didn't have everything he wanted. And then he set it on a schedule to run every 30 minutes. So every 30 minutes, we were having this grinding halt on Jira where no one could use it for like a good 30, 40 seconds. And you could feel it. And we could not figure out for weeks what was causing this. And finally, it was like, we think it's this. I'm like, look, this is an easy test. Let's turn it off. If at the 30-minute mark we don't have a problem, this was our problem.
I feel if we do this talk again next year, there's going to be a whole lot of people finding things that you can do with AI to break stuff.
Yeah,
right? Automation AI will be like, hey, we never realized that we could get this to really fall over.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm excited about with Atlassian Intelligence.
Breaking things.
Yeah,
Yes.
But users who they're digging through documentation, they're trying to write this massive string of JQL that they want to run every 30 minutes. Now you can tell Atlassian Intelligence, I want a query that does this. It gives you, I call them suggestions. Always verify, always verify, always verify the output you get from any AI. But the results that you get from that, you can implement them, and it can be a lot more streamlined than somebody digging through the documentation, looking around, trying to build a query all day for a whole week, and then coming up with something that's just system halting.
And the suggestions thing is really important, right?
Absolutely.
So Rodney mentioned best practices. I always say there aren't any. Like the idea that there's some like golden solutions, I think is very like optimistic. I would say like least worst. And I think if it's offering you like the least worst ways to start your things, that's probably a good beginning.
I've always said that there are about 5,000 ways to do any one thing you want to do in Jira, and only half of them are absolutely terrible.
Only half? Wow.
Only half. I'm being optimistic today.
That's my second favorite phrase. Not only it works on my machine, but it depends. You know, that's really true. And it's not a helpful answer for a lot of people, but it's really true.
The consultants go to.
Exactly, right, yeah.
All right, so wrapping up, why don't you share something that you kind of want to leave with people about, hey, we make mistakes, but here's what I want you guys to think about it. Bill, you start us off? Or we could go over to Brittany or Kit if you want.
I think I've got it. In my career, as relatively short as it has been, there are people who are very, very quick to try to place blame. They want to identify the problem, and they generally will identify a person as the problem instead of thinking about the bigger picture. Is it processes? Is it our internal culture? Is it the tools that we're using? And this kind of goes back to the internal culture organization talk that we were having just a bit ago. Make sure that your processes, your procedures, and your tools are in harmony, because somebody might make a mistake. and it could bring something down. It could make things worse. But it's important to avoid jumping directly to blaming and punishing the person that may have been involved, and think more about what else could have caused this. Maybe it's something with our processes. So that's something that I think is very important to leave with, is think about everything on a bigger scale. It might not always be that person that's really the problem. And this is going to be a lot of fun with Atlassian Intelligence rolling out. We're going to see normal users start to put in queries and prompts, and things are going to happen. And early on in Atlassian Intelligence, things are going to break, and that's generative AI right now. And it's fine. It's fun sometimes too.
Sometimes.
So tomorrow evening, I will be giving a session at the conference on enabling your teams with Atlassian Intelligence. And I'm really excited about this new product and the things that it's going to bring to the ecosystem. But yeah, just don't be so quick to blame.
All right, Brittany?
Yeah, I think kind of relating to the bigger scale thing, I want to borrow from Simon Sinek and say, start with why in all of these things that you're doing here, whether it's we have a problem, we're adding this power up, we want to use this tool or that tool. Start with why and just kind of really back into what you're actually trying to achieve and what you're trying to do. And that's going to save you so much time. It's going to save you from adding things you don't need, making mistakes. And when you have made a mistake, again, start with why. Like, why was this a mistake? What can we do about it? And so it's just really, I feel like it's too easy for a lot of us to play business and play with toys and just try to make things do what they want to do. And we sometimes lose focus of what's the problem we're actually trying to solve. And so getting back to that is really going to help you no matter what you're doing with any of these tools.
All right, Kit?
I think I'll normally argue the people process tools cycle or the why thing, but putting those two aside, I think for me, planning in like intentional failure into how you work with your tools is really important. So there's this lovely idea that we can create like a perfect configuration for our tools with the perfect apps and then roll it out to like other teams. I just don't think you can. So I think it's really important to have a little cycle. And I was chatting to my colleague Gus last night, and he was talking about how every plan is perfect until you get punched in the face. Right? And I think with our tooling, you can create that perfect plan at the beginning, like get those the 5 workflows you want a whole company to use, and then just embrace that there's naturally going to start to be the sprawl. You'll go in, and suddenly Brittany's team will ask for an additional status on something there. Bill's team will do that. You should just know that should happen. Right? That shows that people are using the tools, that they're actually doing things. So embrace that little bit, and then you'll get sprawl. And then you should need to get back around. It needs a bit of kind of trimming. I think planning for that cycle, and that kind of cycle of like, we're going to fail a bit, it's going to get messy, and then we can trim back rather than assuming it's a one-way street. That would be my parting thing.
All right. And I'll wrap us up. When I first brought up this panel, my first thought was, it's really easy when you're making these mistakes to be hard on yourself. God, why did I do that? I am such an idiot. Do I even know what I'm doing? And one thing I wanted to do with this session was demonstrate that, look, everyone makes mistakes. The Jira guy is up here saying, here are some mistakes I made. But here's the truth. I have learned far more in my career from those mistakes I've made and those I've seen other makes than I have learned from any book or any course or any video. And that is just the nature of doing the job. You're going to make mistakes, but take that breath. Don't be so hard on yourself and go, okay, here's the situation. Here's what we do next about it.
Don't worry, I mentioned mistakes in my book, so you can get a twofer with that. You can both get my mistakes and the book learning. So, yeah.
By the way, check out her book and check out my talk on Atlassian Intelligence tomorrow. Shameless plugs.
Shameless plugs, yes.
I mean, while we're doing shameless plugs, I'll also be with That Fire doing a talk on Wednesday.
Also, check out their podcast.
Hey, I mean, if you guys want to watch Jira Live, I mean, it didn't choose us. or man, we didn't choose the Jira Life, it chose us.
I got to do a plug now, haven't I? Community leads in the room. I'll be doing workshops with you tomorrow. If you're not a community lead, that's why you should be one. You come and do fun things there. So be a community lead.
Woo.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll check you out next time.